Aegon the Conqueror's dream. I must believe. The Song of Ice and Fire.
At Rook's Rest, Criston's army encountered heavy resistance from the Staunton garrison, who unleashed a volley of arrows upon the attackers. Additionally, Rhaenys, riding Meleys, released a blast of fire that forced Criston's forces to retreat. Suddenly, King Aegon himself joined the battle, disrupting Criston's original plan. This unexpected move prompted Aemond to delay his own entry into the fight. Rhaenys spotted Aegon and Sunfyre and swiftly ordered Meleys to attack. Aegon initiated the battle with a fiery blast, but Meleys deftly evaded and then struck from below. The smaller dragon plummeted toward the ground, drenching the soldiers below in boiling blood from his wounds. Although Sunfyre managed to stay aloft, Meleys pressed her attack. Finally, Aemond, mounted on the largest dragon, Vhagar, joined the battle, much to the relief and awe of Criston and the Green Army. Welcome to Cephastock Movie Recaps. Today, we delve into the details of House of the Dragon, Season 2. If you're new to this channel, please don't hesitate to subscribe.
7 Kingdoms.
Your support is greatly appreciated, my dear friend, thank you.
Began a tradition.
Previously, on the bridge to Dragonstone, Rhaenyra had a heartfelt conversation with her 2 sons, Jace and Luke, before they departed to deliver messages to Winterfell, Lord Cregan Stark, and Storm's End, Lord Borros Baratheon. These messages were crucial to securing support in the ongoing war. Rhaenyra made Jace and Luke swear on the 7-pointed star that they would serve as messengers only, avoiding direct combat. Unfortunately, upon Luke's return from Storm's End, he faced an attack by Aemond on Vhagar, plunging them into terror. As the confrontation escalated, Luke lost control of Arax, who spat fire at Vhagar.
No, Vhagar!
The older dragon, enraged and disobedient, ignored Aemond's commands to stop, ultimately killing Arax and Luke in a single bite. A horrified Aemond realized that his impulsiveness, rage, and lack of control had not only branded him a kinslayer but also ensured that Rhaenyra would never accept a peaceful resolution. War was now inevitable. In the north, Jace Valerian negotiated with Lord Cregan Stark at the Wall. Cregan emphasized the North's duty to protect the 7 kingdoms from whatever threats lay beyond. Traditionally, for thousands of years, condemned men joined the Night's Watch, but after Targaryen unification, Torrhen Stark instituted a winter tradition, drawing lots to send one in every 10 able-bodied men to take the black. Jace urged Cregan to declare for his mother, Rhaenyra Targaryen, in the impending civil war. Cregan appreciated Jace's diplomatic approach instead of threatening him with dragonfire. However, his attention was divided. Winter would bring wildling raids and other dangers from beyond the wall. Cregan recalled legends of King Jaehaerys I and Queen Alysanne visiting the wall, where even their dragons feared to cross. To him, the massive 700-foot ice wall served a purpose beyond repelling savages. It kept out death itself. While he couldn't spare many soldiers, he agreed to send a few thousand seasoned greybeards. When Jace asked if they could still fight, Cregan assured him that these veterans wouldn't shy away from battle. Suddenly, a messenger arrived at Winterfell with shocking news. Jace's brother, Luke Valerian, had fallen in a dragon battle against Aemond One-Eye over Storm's End. The first blood of the Civil War. Meanwhile, at Dragonstone, Rhaenys Targaryen returned on her dragon, Meleys, from patrolling the Gullet as part of the Valyrian fleet's blockade of King's Landing. Exhausted, only to be confronted by her cousin, Daemon Targaryen. Daemon proposed an unlikely alliance. If Rhaenys teamed up with him and his dragon, Caraxes, they might stand a chance against Aemond's formidable Vhagar. But Rhaenys scoffed. Both she and Meleys needed rest after hours of flying. Daemon lamented Rhaenyra's absence. She had flown off on her dragon, Syrax. Rhaenys explained that Rhaenyra sought confirmation of Luke's death, a mother's desperate need. At the docks of Driftmark, Lord Corlys Valerian arrived to inspect the repairs on his flagship, the Sea Snake. The vessel had suffered severe damage during the same ambush by the Triarchy that had left Corlys himself near mortally wounded. Alan informed him that restoring the ship would take weeks. During their conversation, Alan presented Corlys with a new dagger, a gift from the smiths.
They tell me that you're the one.
Corlys remembered that it was Alan who had leaped into the sea to save him after his throat was slashed during the ambush. Grateful, Corlys acknowledged the debt he owed, but Alan humbly insisted he had merely fulfilled his duty. In King's Landing, the Red Keep's garrison, under the command of Ser Eric Cargill, suddenly panicked when a sentry warned of an approaching dragon. Scorpions were hastily pointed skyward until the dragon was identified as Vhagar. Ser Eric promptly ordered the men to stand down, averting unnecessary conflict. King Aegon II Targaryen visited the royal chamber of his sister wife, Rhaenys Targaryen.
You must not interrupt.
His purpose was to bring their young son, Jaehaerys, to the small council meeting, an opportunity for the boy to learn about ruling as Aegon's heir. In her private chambers, the recently widowed Alicent Hightower engaged in a clandestine affair with Criston Cole of the Kingsguard. Afterward, they dressed awkwardly, and Alicent declared that they couldn't repeat their liaison. The Green Small Council convened for a lengthy meeting. Hand of the King Otto Hightower reported that his nephew, Aemond Hightower, was raising armies in Oldtown, preparing to march north to the Riverlands. Meanwhile, Tywin Lannister informed the council that his twin brother, Jason, was assembling the combined forces of the Westerlands at the Golden Tooth. Aemond's recent betrothal to Floris Baratheon had also secured the Stormlands for the Greens.
The heir to the throne,
Young Jaehaerys, ever curious, kept swiping Tywin's meeting marker, much to Tywin's annoyance. Aegon, amused, encouraged the boy, even suggesting a pony ride on Tywin's shoulders.
For surprises.
Alicent, however, reminded them to focus on important matters. However, their letters to Winterfell and the Eyrie remained unanswered, suggesting that the Starks and Arryns had declared for Rhaenyra.
King, your grace.
Despite the silence from Dragonstone and Driftmark, the Valyrian fleet's continued blockade indicated that Rhaenyra's only recourse now was war. After the meeting, Alicent encounters Larys Strong, the Clubfoot.
They're no longer.
His torturers have rooted out spies, informants selling secrets to brokers like Mysaria. Larys assures her that he's replaced the castle staff with loyal agents. At Shipbreaker Bay, within sight of Storm's End, Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen desperately searches for proof of her son's death. Finally, a fishing boat's crew hauls in a torn dragon wing. Rhaenyra lands Syrax, silent and grief-stricken. The wing bears Luke's cloak, a confirmation of his demise. Overwhelmed, Rhaenyra weeps and Syrax roars in shared anguish.
Kingdoms and protector of...
Back at the Red Keep, Aegon II formally occupies the Iron Throne, hearing daily petitions from commoners.
A tenth of them take...
Flanked by his cronies, he strives for approval as a fledgling king.
Goats for the winter.
His grandfather Otto, ever watchful, corrects him, a reminder of the weight of rule.
And his sheep became...
Third, a burly blacksmith named Hugh explains that the city's armorers staunchly support Aegon against Rhaenyra. However, due to the blockade, iron prices have surged.
The next.
Smiths.
Worse, crafting a single scorpion takes weeks, during which other work stalls.
Weeks.
Hugh proposes easing their plight by paying them in advance.
You shall be paid.
Otto prepares to interject, but Aegon asserts that these smiths are vital. Weapons forged by their hands fuel their cause. After a day of petitions, Larys Strong pulls Aegon aside for a private conversation on the atrium balcony. Larys hints that Aegon need not remain a mere puppet of his grandfather. That evening, Otto returns to his chambers in the Tower of the Hand. There, Alicent awaits him, her anger palpable. She questions whether they share the same goal, victory. Otto concurs, but Alicent insists they must collaborate. Despite her decisions since Viserys' death, Otto mustn't undermine her authority in front of her sons.
Seen it that way.
Otherwise, they'll cease heeding her counsel.
No.
In Blackwater Bay, the Valyrian fleet intercepts one of the last ships departing from King's Landing. There, they discover a bedraggled Mysaria, a woman who had managed to escape Larys' agents, who had set her house ablaze.
I did not think.
Eric recognizes her. They transport her back to Dragonstone, where she faces Daemon. Daemon's fury erupts as he demands to know how long Mysaria has served as Otto's agent.
His plans.
She admits to selling secrets to Otto as long as he could pay in gold, but insists it was purely transactional, no loyalty involved. Daemon storms out, ordering Mysaria's imprisonment as a traitor.
That's why I abandoned the king.
Eric, attempting to defend her, insists she speaks the truth. She was attempting to extort Otto. Unsatisfied, Daemon turns on Eric, questioning why he didn't kill Aegon when the opportunity arose. Their conversation is interrupted by the sight of Syrax returning to the castle. Ignoring reports on the blockade and Daemon's request to seize Harrenhal, she faces the council and utters only 4 words.
Aemond Targaryen.
I want Aemond Targaryen. Meanwhile, Rhaenyra's son Jace returns from the north. Tearfully, he reports that both the Starks and Arryns will declare for her cause. Jane Arryn requests a dragon for the Aerys' defense, and Cregan Stark sends 2,000 men. Overwhelmed, mother and son embrace, grieving for Luke's death. A funeral for Luke takes place at Dragonstone's mountaintop Valyrian altar. Without a body to cremate, they burn his clothing and belongings. Rhaena Targaryen weeps, Luke was her betrothed. Simultaneously, Alicent visits King's Landing's grand September lighting votive prayer candles. She remembers her deceased mother, Alarie Florent, and her recently departed husband, King Viserys. After hesitation, she lights a 3rd candle, for Lucerys Velaryon. Later, Daemon confronts Mysaria in her prison cell. Desperate for information, he offers her freedom in exchange for knowledge of spies who know the Red Keep's secrets. Mysaria, done with noble games, faces a simple transaction, her release for valuable intel. Daemon, shrouded in darkness, slips into King's Landing. Rowed ashore on a fishing boat, he relies on his past as the City Watch commander, the city's secrets etched into his memory. There, he reunites with a loyal former Gold Cloak, aptly nicknamed Blood.
How deep your debt?
Together, they seek out another ally, a ratcatcher known as Cheese.
This is my friend.
Mysaria's recommendation leads them to Cheese, who works within the Red Keep and possesses intimate knowledge of the secret tunnels commissioned by King Maegor the Cruel. Daemon's purpose is clear. He wants to hire Blood and Cheese for an audacious task, to assassinate Aemond One-Eye in the royal apartments. The terms are straightforward, half the payment up front, the rest upon delivering Aemond's head. The duo infiltrates the Red Keep via the sewers, connecting to the hidden tunnels. Emerging near the throne room, they encounter Aegon and his cronies, exhausted after a day of petitions.
The king.
Cheese's advice is simple, walk confidently. The guards assume permission for anyone in that area. Little do they know that Blood and Cheese arrived through clandestine passages. On the upper floors, Aemond and Criston pore over a map. Their target, Rosby and Stokeworth, small castles casting shadows on King's Landing. These would swiftly surrender if faced with a dragon, bolstering Aegon's forces. Criston suggests petitioning Aegon privately for permission, but Aemond dismisses the idea. He bitterly blames Alicent for the escalating war, ignoring her role in flouting Viserys' wishes and pushing Aegon toward the throne. Otto interrupts their strategy session, urging Aemond to temper his impulses.
Rip on your impulses, not.
Cheese, the ratcatcher, admits his limitations. He's familiar with the main level but would arouse suspicion in the royal chambers above.
Take the risk.
Blood insists they must venture there, they're here to kill royalty, after all. Cheese reveals a staircase leading upward, but once they arrive, they'll need to navigate carefully to avoid detection. Exiting another secret passage, Blood sets rat traps for appearances.
Also, it's the next room.
But when he encounters a handmaid, she flees despite his explanations. Time is short, guards may soon stir. Blood hurries to find Cheese. In Queen Helaena Targaryen's chamber, Cheese holds a knife to her throat. Daemon's orders echo in Blood's mind, leave with something, anything. Even if they can't find Aemond, they'll claim a son for a son. But Aegon's wife isn't a son.
The mother knows.
Across the room, Aegon's twin children, Jaehaerys and Jaehaera. Terrified, Helaena attempts to bribe them with her necklace, but they ignore the offer. Realizing her only chance is to save her daughter, she points to Jaehaerys. They stab him to demise, and the sounds of slicing fill the air as Helaena runs away. In shock, Helaena races through the darkened Red Keep, descending the stairs to her mother's bedchamber. There, she finds Alicent in the midst of an encounter with Criston Cole. Unfazed by the scene due to the horror she has just witnessed, Helaena collapses on the floor with her daughter and utters a single sentence, "They killed the boy." News swiftly spreads through the Red Keep regarding the murder of Prince Jaehaerys. Guards apprehend and imprison many of the castle's servants. King Aegon II Targaryen, enraged and profoundly distraught over the loss of his son and heir, vents his fury. In a fit of grief, he destroys his father's model of Old Valyria and declares war on all those responsible. Elsewhere, Aemond Targaryen silently reflects on his role in the night's events, a role that traces back to his involvement in Lucerys Velaryon's death. In the chambers of Alicent Hightower, her father, Otto Hightower, assures her that the city gates have been secured, and the perpetrators will be swiftly apprehended. Blaming herself in part for the tragedy, Alicent is inconsolable. Yet she cannot bring herself to confess her rendezvous with Ser Criston Cole that same night. The Green Council hastily convenes that same night. King Aegon II demands to know Ser Criston's whereabouts during the unfolding events.
Soon enough.
Criston lies, claiming he was in bed. Lord Confessor Larry Strong enters the room, revealing that a man was caught attempting to flee the city via the Gate of the Gods, with Jaehaerys' head in a sack.
His hand.
Aegon announces his intention to personally execute the murderer, but Otto advises restraint to extract any useful information and instructs Larys to interrogate the prisoner further.
More than that.
Lord Jasper Wilde posits that Rhaenyra Targaryen may not necessarily be the mastermind behind the assassination. Instead, someone among their own ranks could be responsible. Otto agrees but deems it wise to place the blame squarely on Rhaenyra.
No, I do not wish.
This strategy will vilify her as a kinslayer in the eyes of the people and legitimize Aegon, who many perceive as weak after his hasty coronation and the destruction caused by Rhaenys Targaryen and Meleys on the same day.
I don't want them, Cliff.
Otto also proposes a funeral procession for
You
Jaehaerys.
came to my room.
The goal, to showcase the depravity of Rhaenyra's actions and further solidify support for Aegon. The plan includes Alicent and Helaena Targaryen participating in the procession as well, the gentlest souls among the Greens. The procession commences, with Jaehaerys' body prominently displayed. A crier denounces Rhaenyra as a kinslayer and dubs her Rhaenyra the Cruel. The commoners of King's Landing overwhelmingly express sympathy for the grieving family, but Helaena grows increasingly uneasy with the attention thrust upon them. Meanwhile, Lord Larys heads to the dungeons for a personal interrogation of Blood.
Targaryen.
The man confesses to having an accomplice, a rat catcher. Larys promises not to harm him but warns that King Aegon may not show the same restraint. Elsewhere, in Dragonstone, Rhaenyra Targaryen is shocked and informed by Maester Gerardis of Prince Jaehaerys' murder.
Double our guard.
Many believe she is responsible.
Movements from King's Landing.
Lord Bartimos Celtigar expresses concern that this news will damage the Black's image at a critical time.
An innocent.
Sir Alfred Broom interjects that it's natural for an aggrieved mother to seek revenge for the loss of a son, but Rhaenyra immediately shuts down the suggestion.
Sins to murder.
She glances toward Daemon Targaryen, suddenly realizing who the true culprit likely is.
If.
Speaking with him in private, Daemon confesses to his wife that he arranged the killing of Aemond Targaryen through Mysaria.
We come to it at long last.
However, he denies having set anyone other than Aemond as the
Seeing
target.
that your heart belongs in.
Rhaenyra grills her husband about the instructions he gave the assassins in case they couldn't locate Aemond.
In my bedchamber.
She accuses him of being untruthful due to his previous desire to spill Hightower blood.
As your queen.
Daemon dismisses any other statements, insisting he is not at fault if his assassins acted independently.
Unlike mine would never.
Pausing, Rhaenyra realizes she cannot fully trust her husband.
Struck down a child.
His recent actions have damaged her image and standing. The discussion ends with Daemon admitting that Jaehaerys' death was a mistake and storming out, leaving Rhaenyra in tears. Rhaenyra asks Baela to take her dragon, Moondancer, to King's Landing to observe the city's activity.
Vigilant.
She emphasizes caution and the need to avoid further mistakes.
Mother?
When Baela inquires about her father, Rhaenyra cryptically replies that he must choose his own path now. That evening, Daemon departs Dragonstone on his dragon, Caraxes, bound for Harrenhal to rally the Riverlands to the Black's cause. Back in the Red Keep, Aegon encounters his wife as she ascends a stairway. However, words elude them both, and they merely acknowledge each other briefly before parting ways. Ser Criston Cole enters Jaehaera Targaryen's bedroom, where servants dismantle the former crib of her slain twin brother. Later, at night, he stands guard over Queen Alicent's chambers. When she nervously inquires whether he has discussed their actions from the previous night, seeking absolution, he curtly replies that none can be found for what he has done. The next day, Ser Criston visits the Kingsguard barracks to speak with Ser Eric Cargill.
Do it now.
He admonishes his underling for soiling his white cloak with mud and orders him to change it immediately, despite Ser Eric's protests. Growing irritated during their conversation, Ser Criston seeks to shift blame for the events leading to the infant prince's murder. He demands to know where Ser Eric was during the assassination.
It's a thief and
When Ser Eric responds that he was guarding the king himself and questions why no one was guarding Queen Helena's private chambers, Ser Criston angrily accuses his brother, Ser Eric Cargill, of being a traitor to the crown. Criston insists that his twin's actions have dishonored both himself and the King's Guard.
What to do with Aemond?
To restore honor, he orders Ser Eric to go to Dragonstone and strike down Rhaenyra Targaryen herself.
We just want to serve.
Despite Ser Eric pointing out the flaws in the plan, he reluctantly agrees when Ser Criston threatens to publicly question his loyalty to the king if he refuses. Elsewhere in the city, blacksmith Hugh returns home to care for his wife, Kat, and their sick daughter.
afraid.
They discuss the advance payment he recently received from the king, as well as the blockade of the Gullet, which has caused price increases.
Do if I could.
They also lament the rise in opportunistic individuals trying to profit from the situation.
See all your great adventures have done.
After many months at sea fighting in the war for the Stepstones, Alan of Hull returns home to Driftmark, where upon disembarking the ship Sea Snake, he's met by his younger brother, Adam of Hull.
Himself.
They speak of the former's rescue of Corlys Velaryon, which saved his life, and the rewards that may come of it, but Alan states he wants none of it, as he senses a dangerous war brewing in the horizon.
His hand at the oar.
In high tide, Corlys and his wife, Rhaenys Targaryen, discuss Daemon flying away from Dragonstone in a time where his aid may be needed, and the possibility of him challenging Rhaenyra for the Iron Throne in the future. Rhaenyra instructs Ser Steffan Darklyn to bring Mysaria up from her cell for interrogation. Mysaria's involvement in Jaehaerys' murder and the Green's crowning of Aegon is under scrutiny. Mysaria expresses regret for aiding the Greens after their attempt on her life.
He gave Daemon.
She believes Otto retaliated against her for extorting him. She insists she gave Daemon the names of 2 agents in exchange for freedom from captivity, asking Rhaenyra to honor her husband's word.
You remember?
Rhaenyra hesitates, recognizing Mysaria from their previous encounter.
In the secrets of the
Mysaria's spy network could be an asset or a threat to Rhaenyra's campaign.
asset.
Nonetheless, Mysaria claims she has no interest in betraying Rhaenyra, her experiences with Daemon and Otto having quashed her desire for significance.
Of course.
Rhaenyra has Steffan return Mysaria to her cell. On the cliffs of Dragonstone, Jaehaerys Velaryon observes Baela practicing crossbow shooting.
Where he went?
They briefly discuss Daemon and reminisce about Laeno, Baela's uncle and Jaehaerys' father figure.
The Harwin.
Baela reassures Jace that his father loved him, and he admits to missing his late younger brother, Luke.
I miss Luke.
The next morning, King Aegon II orders the execution of the entire complement of rat catchers in the Red Keep, including Cheese. Their bodies are hanged from the walls, shocking and horrifying the small folk. An outraged Otto confronts Aegon, who casually admits to the mass execution. Otto castigates the king as ungrateful and thoughtless, as Aegon's actions have destroyed any goodwill and sympathy the Greens gained from the small folk following Jaehaerys' murder.
Murdered innocent.
Aegon fires back that he wishes to spill blood, not ink, insisting that at least he and Criston have acted in response to his son's murder, unlike Otto's wailing and currying favor with the fishwives.
Currying favor with the
A wary Otto asks what Criston has done.
Outside.
His outrage flares when he learns that Criston dispatched Ser Eric Cargill to infiltrate Dragonstone, disguised as his twin, with the mission to assassinate Rhaenyra.
Help us all.
Otto berates them both for executing such an ill-considered plan without informing him or the small council. He bitterly adds that Viserys was right about Aegon being unfit to be king.
I want revenge.
When Aegon retorts that Viserys named him king on his deathbed, Otto sneers, "Is that what you think?" and turns to leave.
Think.
However, as he opens the doors, Aegon shocks him by ordering him to remove his badge of office as Hand of the King.
Insolent.
Aegon insists that Otto was his father's hand and instructs him to give the badge to Criston Cole, much to the latter's shock.
Self is more worth.
Otto scoffs, claiming that Aegon wouldn't dare replace him. Otto scornfully hisses that Aegon will regret this decision, throws his badge at Cole's feet, and leaves. Aegon informs him that he is dismissed from court.
In you yet.
The next day, Rhaenyra goes to Mysaria's cell, accompanied by Ser Eric.
You were given passage.
While she admits she doesn't trust the spy mistress, Rhaenyra agrees to honor Daemon's promise to release her, on the proviso she takes passage aboard the Corwin, a ship of the Valyrian fleet due to sail for Pentos by way of Myr. Mysaria thanks Rhaenyra for her freedom, and Rhaenyra instructs Eric to let Mysaria gather her things and then have someone escort her to the harbor. On the way down to the harbor, however, Mysaria recognizes Eric Cargill amongst the passengers disembarking from the Corwin, and alerts her escort. Eric manages to fool the guards on the castle gates into letting him into Dragonstone, and makes his way to Rhaenyra's private chambers. Finding Ser Laurent Marbrand of Rhaenyra's Queensguard outside on guard duty, he pretends to be Eric, and offers to stand the guard duty himself. Once Laurent has left, Eric slips into Rhaenyra's private chambers. Rhaenyra initially mistakes him for his twin, until Eric draws his sword and apologizes, insisting he had no choice. Before he can attack Rhaenyra, Eric, having been alerted to his brother's presence, bursts in and draws his own sword. Eric places himself in the way and a brutal and savage duel ensues. Ser Laurent, dressed in his bed clothes, bursts into the chamber, sword in hand. He moves Rhaenyra to safety, but unable to tell the brothers apart, urges Rhaenyra to identify Eric so he can help his sworn brother. Bloodied and wounded, Eric manages to gain the upper hand, fatally wounding Eric. Freeing his blade from his brother's corpse, racked with guilt at his kinslaying, Eric begs Rhaenyra for forgiveness, then throws himself on his sword.
Vanity.
In private with Alicent, Otto rages that Aegon and Criston are impetuous young men who need restraint.
He has not the long...
Alicent tries to defend Criston's loyalty to her son, but Otto insists that both are acting out of a desire for vengeance against Rhaenyra, rather than for the good of the realm.
Still have strength in you.
Alicent argues that Aegon is merely lashing out from grief over his son's death, but Otto refuses to remain at court.
Peace, I still...
He declares that he will return to Old Town to mentor Alicent's youngest son by Viserys, Prince Daeron Targaryen. Alicent briefly tries to confess her sins to her father, but Otto gently silences her. Returning to her chambers, Alicent notices Aegon crying for his son. She briefly contemplates going to comfort him but withdraws, aware he would not welcome her presence. When Criston comes to her room a short time later, despite her reservations, she gives in to her emotions and embraced him. On the borders of the lands belonging to House Bracken and House Blackwood, a group of Bracken knights, among them Ser Aeron Bracken, confronts several Blackwood men led by Davos Blackwood.
This is our land.
The accusation: the Brackens moved the boundary stones between their lands to annex more Blackwood territory.
Queen Rhaenyra is...
Ser Aeron denies any wrongdoing and hurls an insult at Davos, calling him a babe killer, due to his house's support of Rhaenyra Targaryen. Swords are drawn, and what follows is a brutal and savage battle that leaves many dead on both sides, including Aeron and Lord Samwell Blackwood. A funeral is held for Sirs Eric and Eric Cargill of the Kingsguard following their deaths in combat against each other. The solemn gathering is attended by Rhaenyra, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, Jacaerys Velaryon, and Sirs Laurent Marbrand and Steffon Darklyn.
That is easy enough.
As the gravediggers fill in the grave, Rhaenys reflects that Otto Hightower would never have sanctioned Eric's attempt on Rhaenyra's life. Rhaenys urges Rhaenyra to reach out to Alicent Hightower, who once tried to avert war after Viserys' death. Rhaenys believes Alicent is pressured into conflict by the men around her. Rhaenyra, however, points out that Alicent allowed Aegon's usurpation of the Iron Throne and Lucerys' murder. Later that day, Rhaenyra meets with Mysaria, expressing gratitude for alerting her to Eric's infiltration of Dragonstone. Mysaria, seeking reward, proposes a place at Rhaenyra's court. She emphasizes her spy's knowledge of the Red Keep's inner workings, valuable for Rhaenyra's cause.
The High Towers.
When asked why she aids Rhaenyra, Mysaria admits it's partly to punish the Hightowers but also because she believes Rhaenyra, who showed her mercy, is better suited to rule King's Landing than Aegon.
I've decided to send
Their conversation is interrupted by Seasmoke's restless screeches nearby. Mysaria speculates that the dragon mourns his rider, Laeno Velaryon, who recently died. Rhaenyra then summons her stepdaughter, Rhaena Targaryen, informing her that she'll send Rhaena and her sons, Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys, to be wards of Lady Jane Eyre at the Aerie. Ser Criston Cole, newly appointed Hand of the King, feels the weight of responsibility as he approaches his first council meeting. Along the way to the council chamber, Criston encounters Ser Martin Rain and Ser Eddard Waters, recently inducted into the Kingsguard, engaged in casual conversation.
Your Grace.
Inside the council chamber, Criston settles into his seat at King Aegon's right hand. The tension rises when Jasper Wilde and Alicent Hightower condemn Criston's plan to send Ser Eric Cargill to assassinate Rhaenyra. Criston defends his actions, arguing that they cannot passively wait in their castles for war to find them. Prince Aemond interjects, emphasizing that the war has already begun due to House Bracken's attack on the Blackwoods. Aegon, pleased by news of Lord Samwell Blackwood's death in battle, considers it the Green's first blood. However, Ser Tywin Lannister tempers this enthusiasm, pointing out the heavy casualties on both sides during the Battle of the Burning Mill.
I'll come too.
Jasper dismisses the battle as an extension of the ancient feud between the two houses, but Aegon insists they must treat it as full-blown war and demand solutions. Amidst a heavy storm, Prince Daemon Targaryen arrives at Harrenhal to claim the castle for the Blacks. Landing his dragon, Caraxes, atop Kingspire Tower, Daemon descends with Dark Sister in hand. Surprisingly, he encounters minimal resistance from the castle's garrison as he bursts into the Great Hall, boldly announcing his intention to claim Harrenhal.
Claiming Harrenhal.
Sir Simon Strong, the Castellan and great-uncle to Harrenhal's lord, Larys Strong, hastily bends the knee and swears allegiance to Queen Rhaenyra. Simon invites Daemon to dine with him, apologizing for the meager fare. However, Daemon is displeased by the ease of his victory and initially refuses to touch his plate. He suspects Simon of attempting to poison him, despite Simon's reassurances that he is a welcome guest at Harrenhal. Daemon questions Simon's swift declaration for Rhaenyra, considering that Simon's house supports Aegon. Simon, however, insults Larys as a curse on their family, emphasizing that he owes Larys no loyalty. Simon also considers his great-nephew a kinslayer who orchestrated the deaths of his father and brother to claim lordship of Harrenhal.
So that I may treat
Simon presses Daemon about the purpose of his presence at Harrenhal. Daemon explains that he intends to use Harrenhal as a gathering place for the River Lords, where they can muster their troops in support of Rhaenyra. A few days later, Ser Criston Cole stands at the head of his assembled army, ready to depart from King's Landing. In the Red Keep's courtyard, Alicent introduces her brother, Ser Gawain Hightower, who has recently arrived from Old Town and will join the march.
My lord father.
Gawain, with a thinly veiled insult, alludes to Criston's Dornish heritage and his role in displacing their father, Ser Otto Hightower, as Hand of the King.
Aye.
After this frosty exchange, Alicent offers Criston her prayers for his safety and, at his request, her favor to wear into battle. With determination, Criston mounts his horse and leads his forces out of the city. The Black Council convenes, and Rhaenys, atop her dragon Meleys, delivers a report: no signs of enemy ships, armies, or dragons moving against them.
And what is
The recent assassination attempt and the Battle of the Burning Mill have left them on edge.
The value of a
Lord Gorman Massey and Ser Alfred Broom advocate for unleashing dragons upon green strongholds, either submission or fiery destruction. But Rhaenyra remains steadfast.
as
She believes that pitting dragons against dragons would lead to mutual annihilation.
Wears the crown of my grandson.
Rhaenys echoes her sentiments, reminding them that the crown Rhaenyra wears once graced the wise King Jaehaerys the Conciliator, a ruler whose legacy outshone all other Targaryen kings.
I wish her well.
Meanwhile, Rhaenys visits her husband, Lord Corlys Velaryon, at the Velaryon shipyards on Driftmark. Rhaenys shares news of their granddaughter Rhaena's exile to the Vale of Arryn, a departure that leaves Rhaena surrounded by mere babes. Corlys scoffs at the idea of young Joffrey inheriting Driftmark, suggesting Rhaena as an alternative. Days later, Rhaena's party departs Dragonstone.
Go safely.
Baela reassures her sister, emphasizing the importance of her mission. Rhaenyra entrusts Rhaena with 4 dragon eggs, symbolizing hope for the future, should the war take a dire turn. Rhaenyra's heart weighs heavy as she bids farewell to her younger sons, knowing that this separation might be permanent. Jace embraces Joffrey tightly, and Baela clings to Rhaena, their sibling bonds unyielding. Alone in her chambers, Rhaenyra finally opens the letter from Alicent, a missive she had previously ignored since Lucerys' tragic demise.
the king.
Meanwhile, Lord Larys Strong seeks out King Aegon in his chambers.
Exquisite armor.
The king is clad in the legendary Valyrian steel armor once worn by Aegon the Conqueror himself, a fitting choice as he intends to catch up with Ser Criston's army and ride to war alongside them. Larys brings troubling news. Rumors circulate in King's Landing that Alicent and Aemond have encouraged Aegon's departure, hoping to wield power in his absence.
You honor me.
Annoyed, Aegon tasks Larys with quelling these rumors as the newly appointed Master of Whisperers. Once Larys departs, Aegon dismisses Martin's suggestion to visit the Dragon Pit. In the Crownlands, Criston intercepts Gawain and a group of Hightower knights leaving their camp to enjoy themselves at a nearby tavern.
My nephew will not.
Ignoring Cole's warnings, Gawain blithely dismisses the danger.
exposed?
But as the sun disappears behind a cloud, Cole realizes they're exposed on open ground, vulnerable to aerial observation. He urgently directs them toward a nearby forest. Panic sets in as they spot Moondancer, the dragon ridden by Baela Targaryen, diving toward them. Barely reaching the tree line, they watch as Moondancer breaks off her attack to avoid crashing into the trees. Cole rebukes Gwaine, emphasizing that their exposed march has alerted the Blacks, and they must now move under cover of darkness, avoiding inns along the way.
A good showing, Sir Kristen.
Isn't by cover of dark starting tonight?
With some half-dozen other nights, I'm sure of it.
Back on Dragonstone, Baela reports her encounter with Kristen Cole.
Your Grace.
The Black Council deduces that Cole heads for Harrenhal. Lord Simon Staunton, anticipating an attack on his seat at Rook's Rest, seeks permission to fortify his lands. Alfred and Bartimos urge Rhaenyra to unleash dragons against Cole, but she remains cautious, promising to consider their advice. That night, Daemon is disturbed by pounding on the doors of his quarters in Harrenhal. Drawing Dark Sister, he opens the doors, only to find no one outside. Rattled, he wanders the corridors, drawn by the sound of a woman humming. Following the sound to a nearby room, Daemon is shocked to find a vision of Rhaenyra as the girl she once was, stitching her nephew Jaehaerys' head back onto his shoulders. Suddenly, Daemon awakens, standing before the weirwood heart tree in Harrenhal's God's Wood, overlooking the God's Eye.
You will die in this place.
As he tries to understand what he just witnessed, a mysterious, dark-haired woman, ominously declares that Daemon will die at Harrenhal, further disturbing him.
You know of the movements of Alicent Hightower.
Would you take her hostage?
In her chambers, Rhaenyra confides in Mysaria.
I think her would be easier.
She seeks a clandestine way into King's Landing to negotiate with Alicent face-to-face.
She is the queen.
Mysaria suggests fishing boats and disguises, revealing a potential private meeting spot away from prying eyes.
Maybe outside the castle walls.
Meanwhile, with Mysaria's assistance, Rhaenyra infiltrates King's Landing. Disguised as a septa, she is accompanied by Ser Stefan, posing as a septon. Their mission, to speak with Alicent. They make their way through the city gates to the Grand September, where they observe Alicent's arrival, flanked by 2 Hightower guardsmen. As Alicent enters the September alone to pray, Rhaenyra slips inside after her, while Stefan waits nervously outside. Rhaenyra confronts Alicent as she prays at the main altar, a dagger pressed to Alicent's side to prevent her from calling for guards. Rhaenyra explains that Rhaenys advised her, believing Alicent desires peace, that they might find a resolution. But Alicent rebuffs the notion, accusing Rhaenyra of bargaining because her allies are abandoning her due to her alleged role in King Jaehaerys' murder. Rhaenyra vehemently denies any involvement in the crime, countering that Alicent is equally complicit in Lucerys' death. She accuses Alicent of being willing to sacrifice thousands for her feckless son's claim to the throne. Alicent, however, insists that Viserys named Aegon heir on his deathbed.
His life after my mother.
Rhaenyra scoffs at the idea that her father, whose love and consideration had long marked her as his heir, would change his mind so abruptly.
Change his mind.
But Alicent solemnly swears on her mother's memory that she speaks the truth.
Untrue.
She explains that Viserys' cryptic words referred to a story from Aegon the Conqueror's time, the prophecy of the prince that was promised. Alicent, appalled, realizes she misinterpreted Viserys' dying utterance.
You of the Song of
Shaken, Alicent urges Rhaenyra to leave before they're discovered.
Conqueror.
But Rhaenyra pleads with her to admit the mistake and help avert the impending war, which threatens devastation regardless of the victor.
God is on the
Alicent, however, insists it's too late.
Alicent.
Her father is gone, Ser Kristen Cole's army marches, and Aegon and Aemond thirst for blood. At Harrenhal, Daemon Targaryen is haunted by dreams of the throne room and his wife, Rhaenyra Targaryen, in her youth. In this dream, she accuses him of wanting to destroy her, a bitterness stemming from his brother, Viserys I Targaryen, who loved Rhaenyra more than he did Daemon. The dream takes a dark turn as Daemon severs her with his sword, only to be abruptly awakened by Ser Simon Strong, the Castellan of Harrenhal. Simon brings news of recent developments in the Green Army. House Stokeworth and House Rosby have both abandoned Rhaenyra's cause, pledging allegiance to King Aegon II Targaryen. Their reason? The assassination of Jaehaerys Targaryen.
My prince.
Next, Simon announces the arrival of Oscar Tully, heir to Riverlands.
His Grace, the King.
Lord Grover Tully, Oscar's grandfather, still lives but is incapacitated.
Lies in it.
This poses a problem for the Blacks, as House Tully's armies remain unrazed.
He might place a feather.
Daemon, ever pragmatic, suggests that Oscar kill his own grandfather to resolve the issue. But Oscar recoils at the idea, explaining that Lord Grover raised him as a son, and such an act would be kinslaying.
Who could
Daemon, undeterred, decides to seek aid from House Blackwood, given House Bracken's defection to the Greens.
Milady.
Meanwhile, on Driftmark, Princess Rhaenys Targaryen speaks with Alan of Hull, the man who saved her husband, Lord Corlys Velaryon.
Rhaenys.
Rhaenys observes Alan's face, hinting at possible bastard from Corlys. Lord Corlys questions her true purpose, and Rhaenys reveals a summons from their granddaughter, Baela Targaryen.
He saved his lord.
The Black Council faces a power vacuum, and Baela and her betrothed, Jacaerys Velaryon, struggle to manage it alone. Alicent admires a stone dragon figurine from her late husband's old Valyria model set when Grand Maester Orwyle knocks on her door.
Delivered discreetly.
He brings Moon tea, an abortifacient, per her request.
Grand Maester.
Orwyle warns of potential side effects, having been told it was for a girl in her service.
Daenerys wanted Aegon II.
Alicent thanks him for the warning and watches as he leaves the room. Alone, she contemplates her predicament. Her trysts with Ser Criston Cole have left her vulnerable, and she hastily drinks the moon tea to avoid any chance of pregnancy. On Dragonstone, Baela Targaryen reports her latest findings after riding Moondancer. Ser Criston's armies, wary of dragon threats, now mostly ride at night and under tree cover in the Riverlands. They advance northwest toward an unknown destination. Ser Alfred Broom grumbles that she should have burned them earlier when she had the chance. Jacaerys defends Baela, emphasizing that their information comes from her efforts. Corlys Velaryon arrives, admonishing their disunity in the Queen's absence. Rhaenys asserts that Rhaenyra is doing everything possible to end the conflict. Ser Criston Cole and his army sack the town of Duskendale, following numerous military successes in the Crownlands. Lord Gunthor Darklyn, loyal to the monarch who named his son, Ser Steffan Darklyn, to her Queensguard, refuses the terms of surrender. He lambasts the Kingmaker for his dishonorable conduct before being summarily executed by the latter for treason. Cole's squire brings him a message, prompting him to change course and order the army to go east, following the coastline. Later, at a meeting of the Green Council, King Aegon II Targaryen vents his anger at Lord Larys Strong. Daemon has taken Harrenhal nearly unopposed, and Aegon blames Larys for allowing it. But Larys remains composed, explaining that Harrenhal is in ruins and will drive Daemon to madness trying to repair it for an army.
Harrenhal back.
The gold of House Strong, however, remains secure. Prince Aemond Targaryen interrupts, announcing that Ser Criston marches on Rook's Rest, the seat of House Staunton, a black-aligned house. Aegon realizes his brother has acted without his authority, but Aemond's High Valyrian address leaves Aegon struggling to respond. The small council silently agrees with Aemond, setting the course for war. Later that day, Queen Alicent receives a visit from Larys, the Master of Whisperers.
Lord Larys.
He notices her absence from the small council meeting and observes the cup of moon tea on her table.
Let's stop her.
Larys subtly alludes to her relationship with Criston Cole but chooses not to press the matter. They discuss Prince Daemon's capture of Harrenhal, and Larys reiterates that the castle's loss is a necessary sacrifice to keep the Blacks occupied. They also discuss Criston Cole's military successes in the Crownlands. Alicent's open books hint at her search for historical references to the dreams of Aegon I Targaryen, as spoken of by Viserys in his final hours. Larys prods her, questioning whether Viserys considered history when naming Aegon his heir.
I doubt his intention.
Alicent laments that her late husband's intentions are now meaningless, war is inevitable, and both sides will justify their actions. Larys agrees. However, the night brings more unsettling experiences. Daemon hears fighting noises outside his room and follows a figure that resembles his nephew, Aemond Targaryen. But when he catches up, he sees his own face, an eerie doppelganger. Disturbed, he stumbles upon Alice Rivers, an unofficial maester of Harrenhal. Alice reveals the castle's curse, tied to weirwood trees used in its construction.
Never settled in.
She prods Daemon about his conflicted loyalty to Rhaenyra, and he accepts her remedy to help him sleep.
Here, drink this.
The next morning, Daemon finds himself in the dining hall with Ser Simon and Ser Willem Blackwood.
As I said,
Willem admires Rhaenyra's spirit and recalls a youthful attempt to propose to her.
Blood of the dragon.
Daemon, haunted by memories of his late wife, Laena Velaryon, sees her image in a servant. Ser Willem pledges Blackwood's armies, but only if House Bracken faces consequences for their betrayal. In another meeting of the Green Council, Aegon abruptly leaves when Jasper Wilde and Tyland Lannister heap praise upon Aemond and Ser Criston.
You all bore me.
He finds his mother in his private chambers, scolding him for discarding his father's books.
Doing here?
Aegon explains that he merely had them removed, not burned.
Removed them.
He confesses to feeling overshadowed by Aemond and Criston.
Aemond, they pursue that.
Alicent, unsympathetic, mocks Aegon's belief that wearing the crown makes him wiser than those who studied and earned their seats on the king's council.
Carefully.
She expresses disappointment that Aegon hasn't learned from his advisors to become half the king his father was.
Opinions in council.
When he earnestly asks for her wisdom, she sternly replies that there is only one thing he should do.
Nothing.
Arriving near Rook's Rest, Ser Gawain advises waiting until nightfall to attack the castle. However, Criston insists on striking during daylight. Gawain reminds him of their recent encounter with Baela and Moondancer, emphasizing that the Blacks possess many dragons ready to strike from across the bay on Dragonstone. Ser Criston remains confident in his plan. After days away, Rhaenyra Targaryen returns to Dragonstone. She now knows with certainty that Viserys wished for her to succeed him on the Iron Throne. Peace with the Greens is no longer an option, she must fight or die. Jace briefly protests her journey to King's Landing as unnecessary risk, but he assures her of everyone's support.
Of peace from my...
Rhaenyra is informed that Ser Criston plans to march on Rook's Rest, the seat of council member Simon Staunton.
I will go.
She boldly states her intention to fly there on Syrax herself, but Rhaenys convinces her to send Meleys instead.
I will meet Co.
Despondent and eager to prove himself, Aegon heads to the dragon pit to retrieve his dragon, Sunfyre. Together, they fly over King's Landing and toward Rook's Rest.
And what I will now tell you. For your claim and...
Before the battle, as Jace protests that he should fight to secure his claim to the Iron Throne, Rhaenyra tells him of Aegon the Conqueror's prophecy,
Ice and fire.
the Song of Ice and Fire.
Strengthen them.
The Green Army emerges from their encampment in the nearby forest, ready to assault Rook's Rest. They deploy multiple siege weapons and hundreds of infantry.
What Viserys told.
As they advance, Criston's army faces heavy resistance from the Staunton garrison, who unleash a volley of arrows upon the attackers. However, their advance is abruptly halted when Meleys, the formidable dragon, appears in the sky. The Greens retreat back to the Tree-Line, momentarily disoriented. Having departed King's Landing earlier, Aegon personally joins the battle, much to Aemond's fury. However, Aemond hesitates, stalling his own entry into the fray. As Aegon's unexpected arrival disrupts Criston's original plan, the Lord Commander orders more signal arrows to be fired.
For the king himself to lay ambush and mayhap. The king has joined you! 7 have blessed advance!
Aegon initiated the battle with a fiery blast, but Meleys deftly evaded and then struck from below. The smaller dragon plummeted toward the ground, drenching the soldiers below in boiling blood from his wounds. Although Sunfyre managed to stay aloft, Meleys pressed her attack. Finally, Aemond, mounted on the largest dragon, Vhagar, joined the battle, much to the relief and awe of Criston and the Green Army. Initially relieved at his brother's intervention, Aegon becomes horrified as he realizes Aemond intends to attack both of them. Heavily injured, Sunfyre and Aegon freefall from a high altitude, crashing into the nearby forest with great force. Despite being at a severe disadvantage against Aemond and a much larger Vhagar, Rhaenys resolves to return to the battle. She circles back, determined to face the challenge. The impact knocks Criston unconscious. Vhagar crushes more fleeing green soldiers underfoot as she takes flight once again. Meanwhile, Rhaenys and Meleys, both exhausted and injured from the battle, prepare to depart back to Dragonstone. Rhaenys attempts to locate Vhagar both on the ground and in the air, but her efforts prove futile. As they fly over Rook's Rest, however, they are suddenly attacked from below by Vhagar, reminiscent of the earlier encounter between Prince Lucerys Velaryon and Arax. Sometime after Rhaenys and Meleys' death, Criston regains consciousness. The battlefield lies in ruins, and the remnants of the Green Army are scattered. In the distance, Ser Gawain rallies what little remains of their forces, pushing through the breach created by Meleys' body to capture Rook's Rest. Criston stumbles toward Aegon's crash site in the forest, seeking aid from a soldier. But the man is nothing more than an incinerated skeleton, disintegrating at Criston's touch. Finally, he arrives at Aegon's shattered body, with Sunfyre curled protectively around him. Speechless, Criston collapses to his knees in shock as Aemond departs.
Where's his grace?
Lord Corlys Velaryon mourned the death of his beloved wife, Princess Rhaenys. The queen who never was made a courageous choice to remain and fight on the battlefield rather than flee. Rhaenys and Meleys met heroic ends after engaging in battle with Prince Aemond's dragon, Vhagar, and King Aegon's Sunfyre. Meleys' decapitated head was dragged through the streets of King's Landing. However, the announcement that the traitor dragon had been slain by King Aegon, which she hadn't, failed to impress the townsfolk as intended. Instead, it left them more frightened than awed.
Strange victory.
If a dragon, once thought to be akin to a god, could fall, then anyone could.
I thought the dragons was gone.
King Aegon himself was carried through the streets, but without any fanfare. His horribly injured body was concealed in a lidded container and taken to a bed where maesters tended to him. His Valyrian armor had melted onto his skin, necessitating its removal, which in turn peeled away his damaged flesh. Bleeding from multiple wounds, Aegon's survival hung in the balance, and Queen Dowager Alicent was informed that his fate remained uncertain. Aegon suffered broken bones from his fiery fall to earth while riding Sunfyre. Meanwhile, his dragon clung to life at Rook's Rest, critically injured.
What happened?
Alicent turned to Ser Criston for an explanation.
Protected.
He confirmed that 900 men had perished, but they had successfully taken the castle.
And Aemond?
Eventually, he lied, claiming he couldn't divulge the details.
Killed.
At Dragonstone, Ser Alfred Broom seethed over the loss of their largest dragon.
Marital spat.
Criston's unchallenged march through the Crownlands had left them desperate.
Quickness of
Their hopes rested on Prince Daemon raising an army, but he stubbornly ignored the ravens.
Battles than I have.
Rhaenyra countered, pointing out that Alfred lacked battle experience himself. Rhaenyra found herself excluded from the discussion until she declared her intention to take her dragon into battle.
Self must do.
She was promptly told it was out of the question due to the risk of losing her. Meanwhile, Prince Jacaerys took matters into his own hands.
Rhaenys is fallen.
Lady Baela intercepted him before he left, and Jace revealed his plan to speak with Daemon at Harrenhal.
Protects you.
Frustrated with being treated as a coddled princeling, Jace reconsidered and decided to negotiate with the Freys instead.
Greybeards are marching.
Their control of the crossing at the Twins provided a direct route into the Riverlands, bypassing the need for Daemon's involvement. Speaking of Daemon, he busied himself by threatening Lord Aemys Bracken and his men with a fiery death by dragon unless they submitted. The threat failed, and the Brackens remained loyal to King Aegon, refusing to align with the Blackwoods and their hired dragon. Ser Willem Blackwood believed the Brackens deserved punishment, but Daemon spared their lives. Daemon admitted surprise at this outcome and acknowledged that men who preferred burning were precisely the sort he needed. He suggested that Ser Willem explore alternative tactics to compel the Brackens to bend the knee, as the crown's hands were tied. The Blackwoods, however, had other means at their disposal.
And more armies.
Lady Jane Eyre welcomed Lady Rhaena to the Vale but expressed disappointment at the absence of dragons.
A dragon.
The Ares' vulnerability lies in its vulnerability from the sky, and dragons play a crucial role in its defense. Lady Jane had promised Rhaenyra 15,000 men, contingent upon Rhaenyra providing protection.
For the death.
However, the young dragons accompanying Rhaena were deemed insufficient, although Rhaena disagreed.
Make me queen.
Notably, Lady Jane had never specified the size of the dragon she sought.
Thrust into my hand the
Queen Rhaenyra confided in her new confidant, Mysaria, admitting her confusion regarding her counsel's expectations.
For too long I have.
She hadn't been trained for combat during her upbringing. Instead, she was groomed for political maneuvering.
Yes, as do I.
Rhaenyra adamantly refused to send for Daemon, fearing it would undermine her image of strength.
Subject.
Mysaria surprised Rhaenyra by asserting that Criston Cole had erred. She believed that spreading rumors could be a potent weapon on Rhaenyra's behalf. There is more than one way to wage a war, Mysaria declared. In a private conversation with Lady Baela, Rhaenyra reminisced about Princess Rhaenys.
My father was furious.
They recalled the night Rhaenys tamed Meleys, describing her as fierce.
Love and in anger.
Rhaenyra expressed gratitude for Rhaenys' unwavering support and wisdom.
She was young.
She believed that Baela, too, possessed Rhaenys' spirit and entrusted her with a message for their grandsire, Lord Corlys. Daemon experienced a vision in which his mother praised him as the strongest one.
Great love.
In the vision, she tells him that he, not Viserys, was made to wear the crown. The vision abruptly ended when Ser Simon Strong inquired about the uneaten duck on Daemon's plate. As they discussed the aftermath of the Battle of Rook's Rest, both sides counted significant losses, and uncertainty loomed over their next moves. Daemon remained convinced that Ser Willem Blackwood would sway the Bracken's allegiance, leading them to garrison at Harrenhal.
In the corridors.
However, Ser Strong needed funds to continue repairing the castle, and Larys controlled the purse strings.
After the
Daemon dismissed the idea of Queen Rhaenyra providing coin. He personally guaranteed payment.
emissary.
A disagreement arose over Daemon's proper title. He staunchly claimed the title of king, while Ser Strong argued for prince or even king consort.
Consort.
Grand Maester Orwyle addressed the small council, reporting King Aegon's severe burns, multiple broken bones, and internal injuries.
We must name a regent.
Aegon remained unconscious, and his fate rested with the gods. Queen Dowager Alicent sought to inform the kingdom of Aegon's heroic deeds and proposed publicly naming a regent to temporarily assume his role. To her shock, the small council, excluding the Grand Maester, rejected her candidacy and instead favored Prince Aemond.
At a time when we must...
Even her private confidant, Kristen, and Larys voted against her, emphasizing that they shouldn't pit their own woman against Queen Rhaenyra.
Aemond is the next.
Prince Regent Aemond assumed King Aegon's chair and demanded a current report on their armies.
What is our stand?
Lost in her thoughts, Alicent listened as Aemond ordered Lord Lannister to hasten his brother's march while the Riverlands remained in turmoil. Aemond also learned that townsfolk were fleeing the city, prompting him to order the gates closed. No one could leave without permission. He further decreed the removal of the rat-catchers' bodies. Meanwhile, Hugh and his wife, Cat, struggled to care for their sick daughter without adequate food or supplies.
Templeton.
Cat urged them to leave before Rhaenyra's reaction to Meleys and Rhaenys' deaths led to King's Landing being set ablaze. Her brother in Tumbleton would provide refuge, although she knew King Aegon would never compensate Hugh for his work. Alicent held her nose as she walked past the decaying bodies of the rat-catchers, determined to confront Criston Cole. She questioned his loyalty, and he recounted witnessing men in melted armor and others still ablaze, yet somehow walking.
To the dragons.
"We have surrendered the war to the dragons," Cole declared, seemingly absolving himself of responsibility.
Have I not
"A
spared?
dragon rider should lead us."
Will you preside over it?
Alicent felt cast aside, while Criston saw it as sparing her from the horrors that would inevitably follow now that the dragons were unleashed. The mass exodus came to an abrupt halt as the gates were shut, trapping townsfolk within King's Landing. Hugh and Cat found themselves stranded, unaware that King Aegon was no longer in control. Prince Jace sat with Lord Forrest Frey and Lady Sabitha Frey, his dragon perched nearby. Since Lord Grover Tully had not declared for Rhaenyra, House Frey couldn't openly oppose King Aegon's forces. Jace insisted that Jason Lannister must be intercepted on the battlefield by Lord Cregan Stark's men before he reached Riverrun. Lady Frey revealed that their primary concern was Vhagar, not Lord Tully. Jace offered the Freys protection, backed by Daemon, who would follow Queen Rhaenyra's commands. The Freys found solace in this arrangement, but Forrest desired to be named Lord of Harrenhal.
My mother will...
Jace agreed, with the condition that they bend the knee to his mother. At Harrenhal, construction work was underway, with Daemon laboring alongside the men. Alice Rivers compelled him to take a break, during which she shared rumors of women and children being forcibly removed from their homes. Daemon wasn't surprised. He had given the Blackwoods carte blanche to do whatever it took to bring the Brackens in line. Alice condemned these actions as crimes against the innocent, but Daemon disagreed. The Brackens had been offered a chance to pledge loyalty and had refused.
These are crimes against the
Alice reminded him that it was the weak who suffered most.
Is that the kind of army?
Daemon believed that all would suffer if Aemond One Eye prevailed.
Women who must...
Alice confronted Aemond, forcing him to admit that he fought for himself, not Rhaenyra.
I'd had the same.
He doubted the people's support for her and predicted her defeat.
I willed it to be so.
Daemon, however, asserted that he was the best candidate for the Iron Throne. "When I take King's Landing," he declared, "Rhaenyra is welcome to join me there and rule by my side, king and queen together." Ser Simon Strong delivered news that Lord Aemys Bracken had pledged his house to Daemon. Daemon instructed Ser Simon to invite Ser Willem Blackwood to Harrenhal for congratulations.
Its highest day.
Lady Baela met with Lord Corlys, delivering a message from Queen Rhaenyra. Corlys described his castle as a tomb, and Baela expressed regret that she hadn't seen it in better times. She recounted Corlys' many accomplishments, all achieved for his wife.
Other I would say.
Baela revealed Rhaenyra's desire to name him her hand, but Corlys, embittered by the demands placed on his house, declined.
Our own will.
Being hand wouldn't compensate for his loss. Baela, done with his anger, suggested that he pledge to King Aegon instead.
Should have.
She handed Lord Corlys the box containing the hand's pin, and his reaction was to name her as his heir.
See.
I am blood and fire, Baela replied firmly. Driftmark must pass to salt and sea. In a private meeting, Rhaenyra confessed to Ser Alfred that she had been wrong.
From your counsel.
She requested that he travel to Harrenhal and speak with Daemon on her behalf.
Your house served my father.
Ser Alfred initially feared removal from her council, but Rhaenyra assured him of her trust in his loyalty to her cause.
And his intent.
She believed Alfred could reason with Daemon and discern his true intentions.
Lack enduring.
Meanwhile, Daemon continued to consume Alice's concoction while neglecting food. His sleep was interrupted by the arrival of river lords, demanding an audience in the dead of night. They reported that septs had been burned, livestock stolen, and peasants put to death by the Blackwoods, all in his name.
The Brackens.
Surprisingly, the Blackwoods rode under the Targaryen banner, committing atrocities not for their lord but as revenge for years of quarrels with the Brackens.
She looked after her girl.
During a vision, Daemon encountered his deceased wife, who inquired whether he was looking after their daughters.
Interlope.
Daemon had been unaware that the Blackwoods operated under the House Targaryen banner. He vehemently denied ordering a child's beheading, but the river lords had heard rumors from across the kingdom. They refused to raise their banners for a tyrant, dragon or no dragon. Quick glimpses of other events followed, Rhaenyra's handmaiden, Alinda, persuading a guard to admit her into King's Landing by claiming she was on an errand for Mysaria, Lord Corlys clenching the hand's pin in his fist. Prince Regent Aemond sat before the Iron Throne, contemplating its worth. Queen Helena joined him, questioning whether the price had been justified.
The price.
Meanwhile, Alicent sat by Aegon's bedside, holding his hand, unaware that he whispered, "Mummy," as she left. Rhaenyra felt both pride and envy toward Jace, who had left Dragonstone to aid their cause. However, Jace couldn't understand why she still appeared angry. Rhaenyra confessed to feeling trapped, unable to effectively support her own cause.
To be granted Harry.
Jace, undeterred, asserted that he would continue doing what was necessary.
Why do you look?
Rhaenyra worried that he might encounter Aemond and Vhagar and suffer a fate similar to his brothers.
You've managed to do your
Aware that Aemond now held the position of Prince Regent, Rhaenyra anticipated his next moves. With Daemon's support uncertain, she contemplated joining the fight herself alongside Syrax. Syrax's speed made her a formidable asset. Jace then had a second epiphany, considering those of Targaryen blood who hadn't ruled but shared dragon lineage. Perhaps a Tarly or a Malister could ride a dragon, even if Valyrian history suggested only dragon lords could do so.
to write it.
Rhaenyra warmed to the idea, realizing that potential dragon riders might be recorded in the Targaryen history books, within arm's reach.
It's a mad sword.